Alright, this is Token. This is my first YouTube vid. Today I'm slapping in an AEM Failsafe gauge into an 03 5-speed manual IS300. So this is an eBay special. I thought this was some neat one-piece gauge cluster mold, but when it came in, I saw it's just some stock column piece that they had screwed in what looks like to be a PVC pipe, some Bondo, but to their credit, it had some really good color matching spray. So I'm just going to go with it. And here's the AEM failsafe gauge I've been sitting on for a long time. I had a cheap eBay mechanical boost gauge to hold me over, plus the old LC-1 Innovate. But the LC-1's really clunky, crazy wiring, hard to calibrate. It was just ridiculous. I had to make a junction box. I saw a lot of people online did the same thing. When the failsafe gauge came along, it's a 2-in-1. I felt this is a good use case where I can have a 2-in-1, and I had a hard time trying to figure out how I wanted to mount two gauges. So I like this 2-in-1, and I like how AEM has a more turnkey nature as far as installation, wiring, and everything. So I wanted to avoid the typical 3-pod gauge cluster you see people put in the dash right there, because I'm thinking about running maybe a Raspberry Pi crankshaft, or maybe even an Android unit in OEM motorized nav housing that I dug up and bought, and I'm sitting on right now. So the wiring I like to use. I like these add a circuit fused chingaderas that make it really easy and clean to kind of tap a switched power source for other auxiliary things. And here's the passenger kick panel that you're going to use 2G, the black wire, terminal 8 for the TAC, which is kind of an optional thing just for the data logging, it appears. And then here's the general wiring schematic for the gauge itself. And I'm using the air fuel analog output to go to my EMU, and I also grounded brown with ground on here. And so here's the two wiring harnesses and the vacuum boost tubing that goes up to the gauge, routed, ready to be plugged into the back of it. And typically AEMs have a light sensor to auto dim the gauge, but in this case, there's a gray wire for this gauge to tap into one of your OEM dimmers, one of your OEM lights that get dimmed, to give it a reference to dim itself. And then I routed the green wire over to the passenger side for TAC output. And usually I solder my connections, but I've been kind of getting lazy and I wanted to up my crimping game. So I bought this pretty legit crimper to test out. I really like how it locks up in the crimping cycle, lets you get reoriented. Like you can see here, I'm on my shoulder and it gets a little difficult. And it's kind of nice to be able to start crimping down on something and actually be able to let go of it, but it stays kind of locked and reorient and then crush it down some more. And when you get to the tightest crimping segment of it, it'll then just automatically let go and then open back up. So it's pretty nice. And yeah, so far so good. So here's the original LC-1 brain. And another bad thing with this was it was actually overheating by being in the engine bay, but I didn't have enough slack to install it inside the cabin. So that's another reason I really want to get rid of it. And so now instead of that brain being there, there's a connector for the AEM wideband sensor. And then like I was shining my light there. Initially I had the AEM harness going along the firewall, but then I decided to reroute it inside the cabin because if I do like a chase bays ABS relocation and whatnot, it'll be really good potential to clean up the firewall really well. And then yeah, I just swap some sensors around under the car. There's the AEM connector now, and no longer having that LC-1 brain there in the way and getting heat soaked. Well, actually there it is, but it's about to get pulled out. And so now with the AEM being where the battery used to be, it's super convenient to also get to it to reconnect it or change it out. Highly recommend battery relocation just for the real estate it gives you in the engine bay. And while I was in there, I cleaned up my EDFC wiring so it wasn't running along that strut tower bar. That's where the battery is now. And this is the semi-finished version right here. Again, they color matched pretty well. The OEM one is already a lighter color than the actual steering wheel. The only issue now is when I do full tilt and turn, there's a little bit of rubbing. So I'm going to have to sand something down or get a little medieval on it to make it truly fit right. But I'm pretty happy where this went. And here's a little something to come. Got some GTEs right here. One's for a friend, one's mine. They'll both be single turbo, AR5 trans, lots of other goodies. Let me know in the comments if you want to see videos on some of the past mods on the car, such as EDFC I have, the EMU tuning on the IS300, the O2 splicing to make the ECU happy. I did a hardline oil return for the CXracing turbo kit, battery location with the electric solenoid cutout, catch can routing and fundamentals, or any other things that you guys can think of that I might have done and can make some videos on.